Why is blackface considered racist? This is what this sub was made for. Glad you got some answers. Context, history. When blackface started, it was done to mock black people while at the same time laws prevented black people from even going to the theater where the performances were held, and terrorist violence and lynchings were used to suppress black political participation or any challenge to the white authority. A bit of, we are laughing at you while we are also kicking you in the face and murdering you. If the history was just, I'm a white actor but we need to play a black part so I will put on some makeup, it wouldn't be an issue. The history. Historically it was used to mock black people, portray Uncle Tom like or stupid slave stereotype characters, mammies, etc. The short answer: it is insult. Degrading parody. It was never meant to be a genuine representation of anyone. It was meant to be a caricature and an insult. From the ground up, blackface was meant to be racist, because it has historically promoted the dehumanization of a specific race. Besides white chicks, who is doing whiteface? Genuinely curious. The only white man to never receive backlash for blackface is the one and only RDJ in the movie Tropic Thunder. And it will remain a glorious movie forever. It was used to mock black people as entertainment. Because American history of black slavery. If there is sensitive history and the mimic audience doesn't like it, then it is offensive. Offensiveness is purely a relative affliction determined and decided by the recipient. Whether it is justified or whether the effect or honor and respect, that is another story. Blackface, even nowadays, at its most innocent form, is still a shallow costume idea at parties that echoes with history and reduces being black to pure entertainment in the form of mockery for the juxtaposed white population at high school, college drinking parties who are privileged with education and non-essential decadent consumption of demerit goods. On the other hand, there is almost also never contexts of learning, awareness and appreciation when blackface happens in American parties. Thus it is understandably considered offensive, and almost intentionally so, as it serves no other purpose. Having said those, people of other skin colors or people from other countries can enjoy the generally slightly lower risk of being considered offensive depending how far removed they are from the historical context when they paint their face black for genuinely educational or theatrical purposes. And of course it is less offensive if it is done to genuinely, say, appreciate history or celebrate racial diversity. Americans who are white or look white simply can't do it without coming across as offensive. Same risk for other white people even if they aren't Americans. By association. Because the historical conflict is too significant. Interestingly, whiteface came about during Bacchanal, Carnival, Mardi Gras, and the Fat Tuesday celebrations, as the only time a slave was allowed to actually have fun and enjoy themselves without the watchful eyes of the whipcrackers. They could dress up, dance, and make merry. One of the things that they did was to dress up as the master in whiteface and mimic and lampoon him. It was a bit later during the minstrel shows that blackface came into popularity, but with white entertainers portraying black Southern agrarian workers. A crude caricature of the Southern black as laconic, lazy and dishonest. You can kind of see the unfair point of the two sides here. Though, one group is enslaved, and is using their 1 week a year to vent their pain, rage and frustration, while the other group is a poor but free man who is capitalizing off of another person's suffering. Perhaps the most famous blackface artist known today was a Russian Jew, Asa Yolzin, Al Jolson, who for some bizarre reason couldn't help but keep up his blackface routine. even though his peers had long since stopped, and his management kept warning him against it. He was the highest-paid entertainer of his time, and easily the most well-known singer, actor. But his insistence to do blackface cost him his career. He and Fatty Arbuckle were Hollywood's first two stars to be cancelled. Blackface has history behind it. Whiteface doesn't really. Because of the history of blackface. Not trying to be rude, but a simple Google search would have told you the history of why it is racist. It was used to call black people monkeys and mock them. Because blackface was historically used to mock and denigrate people. It's the visual equivalent of a white person saying the N-word. They may not be using it in a derogatory way, but history has already defined it as derogatory. It's one of those things that very closely correlates with racists, and anyone who isn't a racist wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. In addition to all the wonderful commentary here highlighting blackface's direct tie to racial prejudice, it had two distinct purposes before becoming mainstream entertainment. In the South, it was a post-war influx of racism that emerged when black people were suddenly free, and Southern infrastructure was largely destroyed, although this was their fault for seceding on the basis of racism. In the North, it was actually used by various not considered white yet groups like Jews to use black caricatures as a vessel for explaining their own hardships. Al Jolson, for example. However, this behavior should not be excused after all. In New York, black actors like Burt Williams were forced to wear blackface over their own black to make audiences comfortable, and the vaudeville scene would allow black performers, but individuals. Venues, mostly in the South, would prevent black patrons from coming in outside of black-only performances. Of course, the North's goodwill would fade as an early version of white replacement theory resulted in the South's more cruel version of blackface becoming the norm. They wrongly felt that they had to protect their jobs from the Great Migration, and popularizing Jim Crow would assist in public perception. And of course, Jim Crow was the original pop icon who inspired all of this. There's strangely strong evidence to suggest that his creator was all about double standards. He had another character, a fop, who went after white women but would also call out white men who behaved similarly. But it does not excuse the fact that Crow was allegedly based on a disabled black worker he wanted to ridicule. In addition, his fop persona was largely painted with the idea that black men could only dress like a classy individual, not be one. He was a cruel man who made maybe one good point in his life, and even then it's debatable how much he believed it. Jim Crow would also be the namesake for segregation laws in the U.S. Jim Crow laws were just intensely cruel and invasive, and ultimately their presence over decades, in addition to police brutality and hate crimes, led to the weight of the civil rights movement. Add on to that how minstrel shows started bastardizing the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, a novel that, although written from a white perspective and not really a helpful text in modern context, popularized anti-racism, especially in the North. Of course, there's also the conversation to be had about blackface directly influencing the design of characters like Mickey Mouse. Felix the Cat. Actually, the first Looney Tune was not even hidden behind animal ears straight up. Bosco the Talk Ink Kid was a minstrel child. This design was popular with animators, as a black body would result in less chance for mistakes and be cheaper, of course. The origin more than invalidates this benefit. He would actually be taken from Warner Brothers over to MGM, where he was redesigned into a blatantly racist caricature. But yeah, lots of really old and really traumatic stuff tied to painting your face that way, or any way that turns you into a person of another race. TBH, as a white person I excuse whiteface on the basis that it's all a response to and commentary on this awful history. Minstrel shows. Because blackface is essentially putting on a character mask to state, your skin is as black as shoe polish, or as dirty as mud. Here, let me do a jig or showcase what I think you people are like. Oh, you don't want to hire black people for your film about the Civil War? Best get some white guy from off the street to put makeup on, because who can tell the difference? All that black people are just wide-lipped, cotton-picking haired, gorillas without fur. Blackface bears with it an implication of prejudice and stereotyping a people systematically oppressed because of that skin, mocked by some people who can so easily put it on like it's a game. It's because it's a mocking parody. When you speak of whiteface, you must be referring to a street mime who is acting out a story through body motions without the use of speech. There are some mimes who are racist. They are referred to as mean mimes. In most Western societies, black is the minority, white is the ruling majority. Politics, high influence, income, jobs, etc., making fun of a minority, pointing out their otherness, etc., is wrong. In a scenario where a white person is living in a black people's world as an arguably unequal minority, it would be just as wrong to single them out and make fun of their whiteness. Blackface also has the historic component, of course.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.